So, Monday's English class is a case of good news, bad news. Do you want the good news first or the bad news? Come on, I can't hear you. This is hopeless. You know how I operate. I'm going to give you the good news first. The good news is this is the only day of video instruction the entire week in English class. Yay! We're happy about that, aren't we? Here's the bad news. That means the rest of the week involves tests. Okay, here's what I want you to do after today, Monday. For Tuesday, I want you to take your test if you're in 9th grade, or your stapled together tests, plural, in 7th and 8th grade, and I want you to look over them, figure out any questions you might have, looking at your notes, looking at your book. I would love for you, even though we're not going to have video teaching that day, I would love for you to contact me in whatever way is most convenient for you. If you have a specific question or questions from the test, I do ask that I don't receive, what about number 1? What about number 2? What about number 3? What about number 4? I'm not going to go through the entire test with you, but it's like we normally do. If you have specific questions, pick out one, maybe a couple, and from certain sections that are troublesome to you, and ask me about those. And as usual, I'm not going to give you the answers. However, I will help you find them. I'm glad to do that. So I'd like for you to do that on Tuesday. Take your roughly 45-minute class period for English and spend it on this specific test review. Then what I would like you to do is start taking the test on Wednesday. If you need to, and often, most of in our group needs a couple of days to finish up the test. That's okay. I've scheduled that in. Finish it up if you need to on Thursday. Even if you get done with it on Wednesday, I'd really like for you to take Thursday and look back and review it and make sure you get any loose odds and ends tied up. I just want you to do very well on the test, and I want to help you in every way that I can with that. So today we're going to finish up our English instruction, and we're going to do so in talking about indefinite pronouns. Indefinite pronouns, whenever they're used as antecedents, meaning there are pronouns that come after them but refer back to another pronoun and not a noun itself in the sentence. Now, it wasn't too long ago that we did have some discussion about nouns as antecedents, and we're probably more familiar with that. What we're going to be doing today is using indefinite pronouns as antecedents. And I've done these a little bit differently today, maybe just trying to keep you on your toes some, and also it's really crammed. I didn't have much room, and I didn't want to do 2 takes and splice videos together. So I know some of this might not, when you get really small, read extremely clearly from the camera's point of view, but if not, just listen closely and I'll be reading each one, and anything you would miss visually in an auditory way, you'll be able to pick up. Indefinite pronouns as antecedents. They must agree with their pronoun antecedents. Other pronouns that come later in the sentence must agree with the pronouns that come earlier in the sentence in at least 2 ways. They must agree in number, and they must agree in gender. Actually, they must also agree in case, but we're not dealing with that. So, number 1 in number. Would you say each will provide his, her, or would you say their own lunch? Well, the reference of whatever this pronoun is going to be, I think it helps to underline and to identify to which indefinite pronoun reference is being made backward, and in this case it is each. Okay? Number-wise, is that 1 or is that 2 or more? Well, of course, each only means 1, just a single entity. And so what would you say in that case? Would you use then, obviously it's not there because that's plural, but would you use his or would you use her? That is a trick question. You don't use either one all by itself. You connect it together in this way, and I know I'm kind of out of room right there, but I think you can still read it. You say each will provide his or her own lunch. Why? Because each does not tell us gender, and even though we're not really dealing as much with gender right now, it's important to go ahead and point that out, and or keeps it just as a singular, but since we don't know the gender, it's going to be his or her. I will tell you again that the book instructs to write his. It's an old school way of doing things. It's outdated English. I understand why it does so, but I'm going to teach you the correct way that you need to know for modern English as you move into high school for some of you, for others as you move through high school, and for all of you as you move out into the real world, and especially many of you into college. This is the way you're going to need to know how to write. Each will provide his or her own lunch. Okay, number 2, in terms of number, many still need to turn in, would it be his homework, her homework, or their homework? Well, the reference of this pronoun that's a blank right now goes backward to the beginning of the sentence to an indefinite pronoun, and that one is many. Many still need to turn in, would it be his, would it be her, or would it be their? Does many tell you one, or does it tell you 2 or more? And since it's 2 or more, then his doesn't work, her doesn't work, his or her, still leaving it at 1, doesn't work. And so the only option that we have remaining is T-H-E-I-R, their, plural possessive pronoun. And by the way, number 2 is a true statement. If you haven't turned in any math homework to me yet, pre-algebra or algebra 1, I'm still missing a lot of that. And so many, a plurality, still need to turn in their homework. Number 3, one of the books lost, would you say, obviously we're not dealing with feminine or masculine gender here, we're dealing with neuter gender in relation to books. But would you say one of the books lost its cover or their cover? And when you throw in prepositional phrases of the books, of the desks, of the cake, of the girls, of the house, of the teachers, over here, of the boys, of the girls, things can get a little bit more confusing because you see a plurality in books, obviously, and so you might think, well, it needs to be there. But listen to this. One of the books lost their cover. That doesn't make sense, does it? That pronoun has to refer back to the subject of the sentence. And the subject is the indefinite pronoun one because of the books is a prepositional phrase. And books is the noun or the object of the preposition of, therefore it cannot be the subject of the sentence. And so when you're describing what got lost, it's one, okay? One. And how many would that be? Would that be a plurality or would that be singularity? It would only be a single entity of one. And you wouldn't say that one of the books lost their cover, even though books is plural. The subject is not books. The subject is the indefinite pronoun one, and that is only one. And so you're going to use the pronoun its. You're not going to use his or you're not going to use her because even a single book does not have a gender that's masculine or feminine. It is neuter in gender. Number 4, several of the desks need baskets. All right, first let's identify what's the subject of this sentence. Guys, I'm going to put these prepositional phrases in parentheses. I think that helps to do so. We've done that many times before. I'm going to do that as we go through each one of these remaining ones, as long as I don't forget, as well. Of the desks is a prepositional phrase. The subject cannot be found in this prepositional phrase. Even though it involves some of them, it's not all of the desks. Rather, the subject has to be outside the prepositional phrase, which is the indefinite pronoun on number 4, several. Several of the desks, would you say, need its baskets? What does several tell you about number? Is it only one, or is it 2 or more? Several involves 2 or more, therefore it's not its, rather it is their. Several of the desks need their baskets. 5 and 6, keep an eye out for these. All is one of those tricky indefinite pronouns that can be used in 2 different ways. It can be used in a plural fashion or in a singular one. How about number 5? All of the cake had icing. Would you say on them or on it? All of the cake had icing on them or on it? First, let's identify the prepositional phrase, and that helps us to be able to distinguish between it and the subject of the sentence. The subject is all, because the subject cannot be inside of a prepositional phrase ever, period. End of story. And so the subject is all as an indefinite pronoun. Well, we often think of all as being plural, and many times it is. But here the prepositional phrase helps. It helps it as far as an indefinite pronoun that can be singular or can be plural. It helps to identify which. In this case, we're talking about how many cakes? Only one. But we're talking about all of that one thing. And so we're talking about not a plural indefinite pronoun, but a singular. You wouldn't say all of the cake had icing on them. Rather, you would say all of the cake had icing on it. Let's consider number 6. Does it fall in line with number 5? All of the girls took curling irons with her or with them. Some of us are blessed to need curling irons, and some of us are not. And that's not just a girly thing, by the way. Caden and Mike and Carter, all of these, and Nikolai before he got shorn like a sheep, all of these have plenty of hair to be curled. Okay, and they like when you girls do things with their hair and little pigtails and ponytails and sprigs and spruces. It seems like anyway. Would you say all of the girls took curling irons with her or with them? Identify the prepositional phrase of the girls. That cannot be the subject. Therefore, the subject has to be the indefinite pronoun once again, all. Now, the prepositional phrase, however, helps you to identify whether this is a singular or a plural indefinite pronoun. Of the girls, girls being plural, and you're talking about all of them or a combination, you're going to end up with a plurality. And so it's not going to be all of the girls took curling irons with her. It's going to be all of the girls took curling irons, starting the prepositional phrase, ran out of top here, or ran out of space here, and then beneath them. Them is the correct pronoun to use following the antecedent pronoun all. Number 7. None of the house, would you say have or has, siding on it or on them? Okay, so I left 2 blanks. A helping verb, a leading verb. None of the house has or have, siding on as a pronoun going back to a former one. Should it be it or them? First thing I think it helps to do is to identify the prepositional phrase, number 1. Number 2, look at this pronoun that serves as the subject of the sentence, and it is an indefinite one. Is none singular or is it plural? Meaning, does it describe 2 or more, or does it describe only one? None always describes one or no thing, or not one are synonyms of that word. And because of that, you wouldn't say none have, okay? But you would say none of the house has, siding on them or on it. Well, there's only one that's being considered, and so it would be on it. Number 8, none of the teachers have posted or has posted or have posted his or her or their grades yet. Which one would you put? Well, first of all, let's identify our prepositional phrase, okay, of the teachers. That can't be the subject, and so it's not going to be to what the pronoun is going to be referring back. However, the indefinite pronoun none, once again, certainly is. None of the teachers. What does none tell you, guys? Does it tell you one, or does it tell you 2 or more? None always tells you, in terms of an object, no thing. I know we say it nothing, but no thing is the content of that word, or no one in terms of people. And in this case, it's no one or not one is under consideration. In other words, one is under consideration. You wouldn't say none have, you would say none has posted. And since it's none, would it be there? It's not one. It would not be there. It would be her. And actually, I'm being a little sexist, aren't I? Here it is, a male teacher only considering a female as a possibility. That is a terrible thing. It should be not just a female consideration, but also a male. We don't want to be sexist, do we? None of the teachers has posted his or her grades yet. I know that sounds awkward and it might even look weird. And by the way, I'm going to suggest to you that your book has this one or one similar to it wrong. It says that it should be have and there. That is totally incorrect. That's not right. None or not one or not a single one. Only one is under consideration, even though there are many in that group. And so it should be has posted his or her grades yet. Okay, so that's number. Let's move on to gender and call it quits. Number one, each of the boys volunteered. Would you say her, his, or their help to move tables and chairs? We have some good boys in our school who are always willing to help out. I think this is very true of them. Number one, each of the boys volunteered to help move, volunteered his, her, their help to move table and chairs. First thing we need to do is identify a prepositional phrase, and that is of the boys. Subject cannot be in there, so the subject has to be each. Okay? Each volunteered. What does each tell you? Is it one or is it two or more? Each tells you just a single one. And when we have just a single one over here, like under number, each will provide, we don't know the gender. And so we say his or her. Well, sometimes a prepositional phrase will help you to identify gender, even though it might not be a help in number itself. It might actually confuse. It helps in gender. What kind of gender is under consideration here? Only the male. There are no females here that are under consideration, although they're great, and you girls would help too. In this sentence, grammatically, all we're considering is the male gender. So in this instance, even though it's just one, we have to have a singular pronoun, but we also have the correct gender that is helped to be identified by the prepositional phrase, and we would keep it masculine. Each of the boys volunteered, not his or her, because only boys are under contemplation. It would be his help to move tables and chairs. Number two, one of the girls might be late. Semicolon, which kind of acts like a period, or like a comma, and then a conjunction after it. One of the girls might be late. Semicolon. We should wait for him, her, or them. Prepositional phrase. Go through this first. It is eye-opening. Of the girls is a prepositional phrase. Therefore, the reference backward is not going to be there. Rather, it is going to be to the subject of the sentence, which is the indefinite pronoun one. What does that tell you as far as singularity or plurality? One. Even though there are a plurality of girls, there's only one girl that's going to be considered. And she might be late. Therefore, we should wait for not him or her, okay? Or not its, as we did over here. It's a certain gender and it's the female gender. And so in this case, the prepositional phrase helps us to identify what otherwise we wouldn't know in gender. It helps to tell us we're talking about the female gender, and so we would only put her as the object of that second preposition. Number three, another of the desks, would you say are out of place or is out of, and would it be his, her, or its, or their place? Identify prepositional phrase first. Of the desks. Okay, and it's not always going to be of. In fact, we're going to see here in a minute, in. Okay? I mean, there are all kinds of prepositions. You guys know that from the whole unit that we had on it. even though we've had of quite a bit. We have in there, we have many other ones as well, literally more than 100. Okay, number 3, another of the desks. So that leaves another as being the subject. Another tells you, and we don't really use this a ton, but it tells you that there's only one that's being contemplated. Even though there are many desks, you have these, you have this one. Well, here's another. We often say after that, one, as in singular, only one. It tells you there is only one, and therefore you're not going to say one are, you're going to say one is. So another of the desks is out of, would you say, their place? Well, if you're referring to desks, you would, but you're not. You're only talking the subject of the sentence about one of those desks, and so in this case you would say out of its place. And that's not an apostrophe. If you had an apostrophe, that would be a contraction for it is. You're not saying it's out of it is place, but out of its place, no apostrophe, no contraction. That is just a neuter possessive pronoun. Numbers 4 or 5. R or W question mark, you might be able to deduce already, means is this right or is this wrong? You tell me. Number 4. Everyone in the class wanted their own book. Everyone in the class wanted their own book. Well, we read number the stars. That was definitely the case, wasn't it? Let's identify a prepositional phrase first and foremost. This time it is in. In the class is the entire prepositional phrase. Guys, the subject cannot be found in a prepositional phrase ever, period. That only leaves as possibilities for the subject. Every one. What does one tell you? Every one. Singularity. So there's only one that's being considered. Now I want you to look at the pronoun that follows. Everyone in the class wanted their own book. Is there a singular or a possessive singular or a plural pronoun? There is plural referring back to one. We have a problem here, guys. Number does not match up. So is number 4 right or wrong? It is wrong. You have a singular indefinite pronoun as an antecedent, but a pronoun coming after referring back to it in a plural way. And you cannot do that and it be grammatically correct. Numero 5. R or W, right or wrong? Everyone in the class wanted his own book. Prepositional phrase before anything else. In the class. Going back the wrong direction on that parenthesis. Okay, in the class, so subject has to be everyone. I know it's slanted a little bit, but you understand what I'm saying. Everyone, only one that's being considered, wanted his own book. Is his plural or is it singular? Now we're getting somewhere. That's a beautiful thing, isn't it? It's singular, just like its antecedent indefinite pronoun. However, is it proper in its gender? Do you think everyone in the class is a male? I don't think so. We have females in our class also. Most classes also have females in them. And so everyone in the class, you can't say wanted his own book. That's not right in gender. And again, I would tell you that in your book, there's one similar to this in 9th grade anyways. It says, this is the way to do it. No, it's not. Yeah, that's an outdated way of doing it. That is not in step with modern English. It is wrong. And I don't have the correct one up here. That's a little bit unorthodox, isn't it? I usually have a right one, a wrong one, okay, or one this way and one that, no. These are both wrong. And the proper way of doing it has to be singular. However, it also has to be gender appropriate. And because any student in a class can be male or female, and we have no other information like we do right here or right here in a prepositional phrase to tell us it's only one gender that's under consideration, you can't just randomly later on in the sentence assume that it's the male gender. And so appropriately, it would be his or her right here in this place where we mistakenly had there and we mistakenly had his. Okay, that is all that I have. That's the final lesson in our unit that we've had on agreement. Again, 7th and 8th grade, you're going to have 2 tests that are stapled together. And by the way, they're both shorter, as you'll see. They're not going to wear you out. 9th grade has, I think it's just a little bit of a longer test. Really none of them, is correct pronouns usage or verb usage for the pronoun, right? None of them is that difficult. You guys are going to do great on these, I really do believe. Have any questions tomorrow? Give me a ring or shoot me a message, and we'll look at whatever your questions are. Other than that, the rest of the week, remember Tuesday, I want you guys studying the test and studying the test only. Don't start taking it on Tuesday. I want you on Wednesday to start taking the test. If you finish it, that's great. Don't turn it into me though. Keep it at least until Thursday. And what I would like for you to do is check your test on Thursday. And some of you might just need that time just to get through with it on Thursday. But do take a little bit of time, proofread it, correct any errors, become as confident as you possibly can be in your answers, and then send it my way and I'll grade it and I'll get it back to you. All right, guys, go knock it out. I know that you will.